We got everybody?
This is part one.
Don't
know what happened to it, but here it is again.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. All right, you have a seat. Call your first witness, Mr. Hurley.
Your Honor, before we begin, can you let me separation, please?
I think that would be appropriate. Granted. Except the state may have a representative to set a table.
Just, if we could just briefly, just to take a procedural question we have, and I would like to raise with the court is, we'd like to understand and make sure that we are here relative to an indirect contempt filing on an issue today. And if that is correct, we would just ask that the procedures in Indiana Code 34-47-3-7 and ask for the appointment of a special judge relative to the requirements for indirect contempt findings in the state of Indiana. Thank you, Judge.
Okay, Bridge. Jamey Noel residence.
And are you familiar with that residence? Have you been there before?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 1. Would you take a look at State's Exhibit 1?
Okay,
What is State's Exhibit 1?
that's 3001 Otay Bridge. Jamey Noel residence.
Is that the same address you just were speaking about assisting with a search warrant on March 13th?
It is.
Does that appear to be truly and accurately reflective of the outside of the residence on Tay Bridge?
It does.
No objection to State's Exhibit 1, Your Honor.
So state's exhibit number 1 admitted without objection.
You understand the move to admit?
Admitted.
Detective, were you in charge of the search warrant or the scene at Old Tay Bridge Road on March 13th?
I was not.
And who were you taking direction from?
Lieutenant Jeff Herron with the Indiana State Police.
Did you have any contact with the defendant, Jamey Noel, on that day?
I saw him, but I didn't communicate with him.
Did you have any conversation at all?
I did not.
What was your role once you got to Tay Bridge and you went into the home?
To help search.
And you recall what you were searching for?
We were searching for Tom James suits and apparel, shoes, belts.
Were you searching for anything else with respect to Tom James' clothing?
Any receipts or documents associated with those items.
Were you provided any type of lists of apparel items or things that you were specifically looking for?
I was.
Who provided that to you?
Lieutenant Jeff Herron.
Was that prior to the search or once you got to Tay Bridge?
Once we got to the location.
How was it decided where you were going to be searching specifically yourself?
We just kind of communicated upstairs once the scene was secured, and I volunteered to go downstairs and start in the basement.
Can you describe the basement to the judge?
Your Honor, when you walk down into the basement, it opens up into a large living room type area, family room. There's another door that if you continue down the stairs, it goes into a back room, which is a movie theater area. And then I centered focused my search to the left when you walked into the back room, which was a table area where there was some Tom James suits and apparel.
Was the basement a finished basement or a concrete basement?
Well, it was finished with the exception of one part, which was kind of storage. There were shelves in there.
Were there any living areas in the basement?
I do believe there was at least one bedroom downstairs.
Did you go to the basement alone or with any other troopers and or other state police employees?
I don't remember if I was down there alone at any one given time, and I don't remember who went with me. There were various people that came down with me during the search.
Detective, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes. States Exhibits 2, 3, 4. Do you recognize States 2, 3, and 4?
I do.
What are they?
These are pictures of the area. When you come down the stairs and go into the back room to the left, this is the table and the area of where I focused my initial search in the basement.
So 2, 3, and 4 are a basement area?
Correct.
Why did you go to this specific area? Were you searching for something specific there?
Well, when I first got to the residence, Mr. Noel took Lieutenant Herron downstairs, and he was showing Lieutenant Herron where the areas of areas in the house where there were Tom James suits and apparel, and that was one of the areas that he pointed out, and I was present when that happened, and that's why I focused my search down there. Not to mention, you could also see some containers, little shopping bags that were John or Tom James apparel bags. So that's why I focused my search there.
Did the defendant specifically show you and Detective Herron this location?
He did.
Those truly and accurately reflect the area in the basement where he directed you to.
It does.
Your Honor, we do not have any objection to States Exhibit 2, 3, and 4.
State would move to admit States 2, 3, and 4, Your Honor.
States Exhibits 2, 3, and 4 admitted without objection.
Your Honor, if I can use these with the
You may.
witness. I want to direct your attention to States Exhibit 2, Detective. Did you take the photograph?
I did not.
But does it truly and accurately reflect what you saw there?
It does.
Okay. I want to direct your attention specifically to a black object sticking out of a box.
Okay.
Did you see this object when you were conducting your search?
I did.
What is it?
It's a shotgun.
Was that shotgun examined in any way, shape, or form?
It was. I looked to see if it was loaded.
And why did you do that?
Well, I mean, I'm in that area searching, and firearms are dangerous.
Did that cause you any kind of concern if there was a shotgun there?
It did not.
Now, the States 3 and 4, these two photographs focus on a white box with a black box inside of those. Do you recognize those as well?
I do.
And is that how they look when you saw them?
They do.
Did you look inside of that large white box?
I did.
Okay, for what purpose?
We're looking for any receipts, documents, belts, and other apparel.
Okay. Did anything cause you any type of concern in that box?
Well, when I moved the chair out, inside that box was 2 Smith & Wesson boxes, which Smith & Wesson is a firearm.
And that's something you're familiar with, being a police officer for nearly 30 years?
I am.
Smith & Wesson is a brand.
It is.
Did you examine the contents of the box?
I did.
And what was inside the box?
2 firearms, handguns.
Did they appear to be loaded?
I don't believe they were.
Once you noticed these 2 firearms, what did you do?
I notified Detective Chris Hansen and Lieutenant Jeff Herron.
And just for the record purposes, Detective, you're talking about in States Exhibit 2, the center of the picture, white box, black box, and inside of it with you can at least see it says Smith on it.
Yes.
And then in States Exhibit 3, you're talking about the white box on the chair.
Yes.
Okay. Why did you notify Detective Herron once you located these 2 firearms?
Well, it was my responsibility to let him know, having been here for the initial hearing and hear the judge order the defendant to only possess a gun. When I found the firearms, it's my responsibility to notify the lead detective, Lieutenant Jeff Herron, and I did.
Obviously, those 2 Smith & Wesson were not shotguns.
They were not.
You saw a shotgun there and it didn't cause you any concern other than to make sure it was unloaded.
Correct.
You stated that you were here for a initial hearing with this particular defendant, with this particular judge.
I was.
Were you present when he was, I guess, told what he could keep and what he couldn't keep?
Yes,
Is that why you contacted Detective Heron?
it was.
Did you physically take these guns into your possession at the time?
I did not.
Ultimately, did the Indiana State Police take them into their possession?
They did.
Your Honor, may I approach you? You might have an opportunity to. Of course.
Detective, states 2, 3, and 4 that Mr. Wilder,
Mr. Wilder, 1, 2.
Yes.
states 2, 3, and 4. The chair was partially pushed under a table at the time, or all the way under the table?
I believe it was all the way under the table.
Okay. The items that were located on top of the table, did you examine any of those items?
I did.
What were some of those items?
There were, what I recall mainly was a cowboy hat and cowboy western footwear, boots.
Did they appear to be men's, women's, or you couldn't tell?
I think men's.
And this is the area that the defendant directed you, Detective Heron, to.
Correct.
Did you find any Tom James apparel, suits, belts, shoes, or anything like that in that particular area as well?
I did.
Your Honor, I don't have any other questions for Detective Mitchell.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Detective. I want to talk to you a little bit about your role. You got on March 13th, you were asked to get a search warrant together, is that it?
I did.
Okay. And when you do that, how do you do that? You call somebody?
I was called by Lieutenant Jeff Herron
Okay.
sometime that morning. He told me he was going to be executing a search warrant and asked me that if I would get a couple troopers and a couple detectives.
How many troopers did you go into that house with?
2 troopers.
And how many detectives?
I believe 4.
Okay, so you got 6 people plus yourself.
Well, there was a crime scene technician as well, and I believe there was
That's
someone
7.
there. Pardon me?
That's 7. Who
Yeah.
else?
There would have been someone there from State Board of Accounts as well.
Okay. Do you normally, when you execute a search warrant, you bring somebody from the State Board of Accounts?
Not in any of the cases that I've worked.
Not in
except-
all the 29 years you've worked at the state police. Have you ever taken anybody from the State Board of Accounts
No.
in on a search warrant?
Not me personally, but this isn't the first time that someone's from State Board of Accounts has been there.
Okay, but there's at least 7 to 8 people going into that house, correct?
Correct?
Now, who was in charge of that search? You?
Lieutenant Jeff Herron.
Okay, so Lieutenant Herron's the one giving the orders.
Correct.
And that's how it works in your office.
That is correct.
Okay. And when Lieutenant Herron, he would have assigned, because it's a large house, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, how many rooms?
I do not know.
More than 10?
Yes.
Okay. Finished, unfinished?
Most of it was finished with the exception of the basement area where the dogs were at.
Okay. And what you had for the request of the search warrant were clothing. Is that correct?
Clothing and documents and receipts associated with those clothing.
Okay. Well, I noticed in the return of the search warrant, there isn't anything listed where you got any of this material. In other words, let me look you and see if you could refresh your recollection and tell me on item
No.
2000, where'd you get it?
I didn't fill out this. I didn't collect any clothing. I didn't fill this out.
Well, let me understand something. You got all these people in there to search a house, correct? Lieutenant Herron is in charge, okay? And you go to a closet to get something. Don't you document where you got it, how you got it? take a picture of it?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me from that return, tell the court what a return is?
A return is a document that's completed by law enforcement after they execute a search warrant to notify the court of what items were taken during that search.
Does it also supposed to indicate to the court where they came from?
I do not, in my 29 years, I don't believe so. If
You've
it is,
never put
if it is,
on-
you've educated me today.
Okay, you've never put on anything in a search warrant where it came from? Like
On a search warrant or search warrant return?
return.
On a search warrant return, I've never put anything in there about where something was recovered from.
So it's up to the court to, or anybody, we have to guess. Wonder where he got
Well,
that.
from that document, you would, but there's a police report that should identify then where those items were found.
Where's the police report?
File with the court, the return.
Okay.
So the court doesn't have any idea where you got any of this stuff, does it?
With that document,
Yes, sir.
with the exception of 3001 Old Tay Bridge, you're correct.
Okay. And that is true for every item that you seized that day. There's no indication where it came from.
Well, I mean, I can look at it again, but I didn't complete that document and I didn't seize any evidence.
Okay.
So I
But
just-
somebody did.
Right.
And somebody's required to fill out a return that says, A, where they got it, what it was. Is that correct?
So this document that you have here for me to look at is an Indiana State Police Property Record Receipt Form,
Okay?
which is where you put the item down that you give the item and number,
Okay.
and then you give a description of items submitted, which is right here.
Right. But you
And
don't
that's
give
what-
any
That's
description.
what these are, but there's nowhere on this form for anyone to put, unless I guess you could write in that you found this item here, this item there, but this form is for items submitted.
Sure.
It's like an inventory.
Yeah, and it would be helpful to know where you got it, wouldn't it? In a large house with all this items.
Certainly it'd be helpful, but that's going to be documented in a police report.
Well, it'd be technical,
For me.
wouldn't it? It'd be very helpful to be technical and say exactly where I got something and what it was, correct?
Correct. On a police report, that's what would be there.
So you've got 7 to 8 people going through this house. And Lieutenant Heron is the one that directs where you go. Is that correct?
I mean, there's discussion in advance, like, okay, we've got this house to search. We have a crime scene technician that's going to photograph everything, and then we're going to just kind of communicate and go about it in an organized fashion. And I said, I will go to the basement.
Very often what you do, don't you, is you go to a location, you see a piece of evidence, then the crime scene technician takes a picture of what evidence you found. Is that right? Is that correct?
Well, yes, but like in this case, the crime scene technician took photos prior to the
I
search.
understand that.
Then the search is conducted, item is found, you notify the crime scene technician who comes down and photographs that item, and then ultimately collects it.
Did he photograph then every item where it was located?
Every item that's on that list,
Yes.
I do not know the answer, sir.
Okay. So we don't have a series of pictures that you know about that would document where the clothing was. Correct?
Each item of clothing, I can't say that, no. I do not know the answer to that.
Okay. And what room did you go to and who was with you?
I went to the basement, as depicted in the state's exhibit there.
State's exhibits.
And I don't remember who went with me initially.
What was your role?
Just to look for Tom James suits and apparel. I was provided with a list of items with serial numbers next to them that was to be compared to the, say for instance, we find a box of shoes that came from Tom James.
There's his
It would have a
wife
number on that box, and we
and
tried to
his
compare
other
that
daughter.
number to the list that was
I don't know who that
presented.
blonde-headed
Jeff
lady is to the right,
Those were the items that he would
or
then
to the
look
left
sell.
of her.
You indicated that
Which
our
is
client,
here.
Mr. Noel, was there and directed you into a particular location. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Take a look at the picture that's up on the screen.
Clorox Toilet Wand is the all-in-one system that destroys tough stains, loaded with a powerful cleaning solution.
I I put a commercial in
That's our
there
state's exhibit
since I ain't getting paid for it.
3. Is this one of the rooms you went into?
It looked like he's a
I guess you
hoarder.
could say it is a room. It's a downstairs.
Is it part of the unfinished part of that house?
There, to the right of that is a movie theater.
Okay. Which you would say would be a furnished room.
I mean, there's a chair and a table in there that's furnished, so it is furnished. The walls look like, I don't recall, but from the photo, the walls look like they're concrete.
Was the rest of that area as cluttered as this was?
No.
Okay. Would you call that a cluttered room?
I call it a
lot of stuff in
hoarder
there.
room.
I would say, no, I would not. I would say on top of the table, it's
Yeah.
cluttered, but
Yeah.
not that room. I see pictures hanging on the wall.
What about all those
I
boxes
see
over
some,
there to
well,
the left?
they're kind of stacked up. Certainly not as cluttered as what's on the table.
Correct. What are in the boxes on the left?
I don't recall. I believe those are the shoe boxes.
Did you go through those?
I'm sure I did.
You don't know?
I don't remember.
Okay. What's all the stuff underneath it?
Don't know. Various items.
Okay. And you said that on top of the table it was clothing, shoes, a number of pairs of cowboy boots, a hat, all kinds of things there. Is that correct?
I don't believe I said there was clothing items on top of the table. I don't recall if there was clothing items. Certainly there's footwear. There were belts.
You don't know what any of this is underneath the hats?
No.
Okay. Did you go through these boxes?
I may have.
How about this black box here? What was in that?
I don't recall.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Did you
Probably
make
shoes.
an
They
effort
look like
in
a
your
shoe
search
box.
to go through every box in that room?
Yeah, so ultimately, after I found that firearm, a gentleman from the State Board of Accounts came down at some point, and someone else, I left the area and went upstairs. And they continued to search by comparing the numbers.
So the State Board of Accounts is searching now.
Everyone's searching, as we talked about.
You don't know how long you were in here.
I don't remember.
Now, as I understand it, Mr. Noel told you to go in this room, correct?
Well, I mean, he didn't really say you need to go in this room. He said there are some items here.
Well, he's trying to be helpful to you by saying there may be some items. You've told him what you're looking for, and he's indicating where you could go. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you indicated that one of the items that you were looking for was in that box.
I did not.
It just happened to be that you went to that box.
I ultimately ended up going to that box as I was searching that area. I pulled that chair out, and there this box is that has 2 boxes in it that say Smith & Wesson, which I'm familiar with as being firearms.
Is that the way the box looked on State's Exhibit?
Yes. 4.
Exhibit 4?
I believe so.
For the record. Okay. All right. And the stuff on the box, or the stuff above the box, was the same kind of stuff that we'd seen at a different angle from State's Exhibit that had been previously shown to you.
Yes.
Correct. All right. Now, let me ask you, where was Mr. Noel when you were in that room?
I think he had left the residence at that point.
Are you sure?
Pretty confident he had.
Okay. Are you the only one down there when you're searching? Are you the
Not
only
through the
individual?
whole entire event that I was down there searching, no.
Okay. All right. When was the state police searching in that house before?
I believe August 16th.
Okay. And what were they looking for then?
Bank records.
Was the search previously that you were part of,
I was part of that search, yes.
that was done the same way? In other words, a number of people went through the house looking for all kinds of items.
Same thing, I got a call from Lieutenant Jeff Herron, said I need your body to assist me and searching.
All right.
And there were a number of people.
And that's what you did?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you indicated that what you found in that box, it had nothing on top of the box, it just was there, correct? Just like these other boxes.
We're talking the box
The
here.
box right
Exhibit
there.
4.
That exhibit that's seeing them.
Right, I believe that depicts it how it was.
Okay. And so is that picture taken before you took the weapons out?
After.
Right there's the weapons.
So you take the box out, get the weapons, and then put the box back so they can take a picture?
Yeah, so, Your Honor, going through the search, initially there were photographs taken of the entire scene. Then we conduct the search. And as I'm searching, I pull the chair out and I look down and I see the boxes. I open it up, there's in fact a firearm there. Then I went up and notified Lieutenant Jeff Herron of that fact, as well as First Sergeant Merritt Toomey, who's our crime scene guy. We went back down, I pushed the chair back underneath, put the box back. I don't think I took anything out of the box. I think I pulled the chair out, looked, and was like, okay, there's firearms in here, and then pushed it back under, notified them, and then he took that photo.
My question to you is, does that picture show before the search or after?
That picture there, Exhibit 4, I believe is going to be after my discovery.
You had already discovered something, showed Lieutenant Herron, brought it back, put it back and try to recreate the scene, and then had him take a picture?
I would like to answer that question, but you say I brought it back. What do you refer to by that?
Did you bring the box up to...
No, I did not. I left it right where it was at. I went and got Lieutenant Jeff Herron, and he came downstairs.
And then, when you pushed the chair back, that's when you had the photographer take a picture?
Correct.
Okay. The two boxes that you found inside the large white box, there were weapons in there?
They were, yes.
Unloaded, I think you testified on.
I believe they were.
Correct?
I believe so, yes.
What was their condition?
I think they were brand new. I mean, they appeared to be. They were in the box that comes from the manufacturer. It appeared to be.
Well, matter of fact, they found you had a receipt, didn't it? Show when it was purchased.
I did not. I don't know the answer to that.
Did you ever look through that box when you turned it over to Lieutenant Herron to find out when they were purchased?
I did not.
Okay. And you don't recall independently ever seeing a receipt in that box?
I don't think so.
Okay. What color were those Smith & Wesson boxes?
Black and white.
Okay. You never took a picture of those out of the box. You
No.
just left them in the box. In other words, you take them out of the box to photograph them that way.
Well, I personally, sir, I never took a photograph.
Okay. And you don't know what the technician did?
I do recall him taking the photos of those firearms out of the box when they were laid on the ground. After, kind of put it in order, I start my search, I pull it out, I see the firearm, open one up, there's a firearm, I immediately go upstairs and notify Lieutenant Jeff Herron. He comes down with me as well as First Sergeant Merritt Toomey. We put it back like that and the photograph's taken. And then Lieutenant Jeff Herron makes the decision that those firearms are ultimately potentially going to be seized and they're photographed, taken out of the box.
But we don't have that photograph. The one that you show, or at least testified to, that their guns were taken out of the box, put on the floor, and then photographed.
I don't have that photograph with me, sir.
Okay, and we haven't seen it yet.
I've not seen it.
Okay.
I don't know if we have it or not, but
All right.
StreamYard, that's who I'm using, people. StreamYard. That's a paid advertisement for StreamYard. They snuck in some of Larry Wilder's vacation pictures. What's that got to do with the case?
He's fired.
I'm fired. Did you not put those in?
We at the 30-minute mark, people.
Officer Mulvaney was remarked for purpose of identification as defendant's exhibit now. And she's given it 1. Can you identify what's in that picture?
I see 2 Smith & Wesson firearm boxes, and I see 2 what appear to be Smith & Wesson firearms with 2 magazines and 2 boxes 9mm Luger ammo.
Does that refresh your recollection of what you saw that day?
I believe so.
Okay, thank you. This time, Your Honor, we would offer defendant's exhibit 1.
No objection.
Show defendant's exhibit number 1 admitted without objection. May I see it, Mr. Foltz?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor.
I'll give it right back.
You can keep it.
Well, thank you.
Officer, when you took a look at that picture, the 2 boxes that you previously identified that were inside the larger white box, did you recognize those as what you had seen that day?
That photograph that you just showed me certainly appears to be similar type items discovered by me on that date.
And so those boxes were inside the white box.
Correct.
And the weapons were inside the black boxes, which are the Smith & Wesson boxes that you testified to.
That is correct.
And I think the gun was in a cocked position to only show that it was not loaded. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, I don't know if that weapon has a hammer on it or not. I
Well, it
don't.
looked like it was an automatic.
Well, but I mean,
But did you look
I
at the
can't
gun?
tell from the photo if it was cocked. The slide was back on, which would be in a safe position.
Okay. Did you ever examine the weapons yourself?
I did look at them, and I don't remember 100% if I remember that the slide was back on them or not. But I immediately notified Lieutenant Jeff Herron, and then he took over from there.
Okay. And the shotgun that you found was kind of standing up in that same room?
It was in a box,
Okay.
but shot or barrel up.
Right. I don't believe any.
Officer Mitchell, could you?
Okay, people, my question is, if he's allowed to keep one shotgun, how come it wasn't in his bedroom? You know, that's my question. Wouldn't you keep it in your bedroom or in the living room? What's weird about this? Was Jamey Noel sleeping in the basement because he had a child by this woman that he paid her child support out of the Utica Fire Department? Also, can't the judge order him to turn them credit cards over when he gets out of jail? You know, that's my point. Let's get back to the video.
Come to the screen and show me where the shotgun was located?
I will, Your Honor.
Sorry to interrupt, gentlemen.
Your Honor, there may be another picture that shows it more accurately.
Okay.
Your Honor, this box right here, there's a cardboard box here.
Yes.
The lid is shut on it. On the day that I went, the 13th of March, if this is the same box, these they were opened up, and there was a shotgun sticking down inside right here.
All right. Mr. Hurley says there may be another picture that better shows it. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Cross-examine or redirect, Mr. Hurley.
Detective, how close were the shotguns to the 2 Smith & Wessons that were found?
3 feet, approximately. I didn't measure, but very close.
Some to-dos show up unexpectedly. Petco helps you cross off each one easier.
Detective, I'm showing you State's Exhibit 2.
I threw some commercials in
State's
there,
Exhibit 2, the black barrel, do you recognize that sticking out?
The shotgun barrel.
which I
sticking
do
out
not
there,
get
do.
paid
And
for,
I'm sorry,
but I
Officer, how
think you
close
all
is that to
need
the
to
chair,
have commercials.
boxes of Smith & Wessons?
Couple feet, 2 or 3 feet.
Arm's
approximately.
distance from you and I?
Yes.
That's it, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Boyles?
No, Your Honor.
I think you're excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Receive release.
Yes, sir.
Officer, I'll remind you not to discuss your testimony with anybody, nor allow them to discuss their testimony with you until this matter is being completed.
I understand, Your Honor.
Call your next witness.
Your Honor, say we call Merritt Toomey.
You may.
I can try and retrieve him, Your Honor, but he stepped out.
Well, I think he was asked to step out.
There was a motion.
Were you sworn earlier, officer?
Yes.
You were?
Yes.
I'll consider you under oath. You may proceed to the witness stand. Proceed.
Sir, would you state your name for the record?
Merritt Toomey.
And probably for the record, if you spell your first and last name.
First name's Merritt, Merritt. Last name's Toomey, Toomey.
Mr. Toomey, where are you employed?
Indiana State Police.
And what is your current position with the Indiana State Police?
I'm a first sergeant in the crime scene section.
I'm sorry, how long have you been with the state police?
32 years and a few months.
And has it always been as a crime scene technician, supervisor there?
No, I started out as a road trooper. I was a detective, and then I was a crime scene investigator, and then just within the last year and a half, I became the supervisor.
Is it appropriate to call you sergeant or first sergeant? What's
I'll answer to either one.
Or Sergeant, were you asked to be a part of a search warrant on Tay Bridge on March 13th, 2024?
I was.
Who reached out to you originally?
That would be Lieutenant Herron.
Have you worked with Detective Herron in the past ever before or not?
On previous search warrants, I have.
Were you familiar with the residence on Tay Bridge?
It was my first time being there.
And what was going to be your role on March 13th of this year?
I was there to document the property.
Were you to collect evidence or photograph in any way, shape, or form?
I was photographing the property primarily until some evidence arose that needed to be collected.
I want to direct your attention to the basement area. And were you brought down to the basement area to look at, photograph, and collect some evidence?
I was.
And what sort of evidence was that?
There were 2 guns that were still in boxes. I'd have to refer to my notes to tell you the particulars.
Do you recall who directed you to those guns?
That would have been First Sergeant Mitchell.
Do you work with First Sergeant Mitchell much?
I do.
Did you photograph those guns?
I did.
Were they in a box or out of the box when you first saw them?
They were in the box that they came in from the company, and then both of those 2 boxes were inside of another cardboard box.
So they were in their manufacturer's box
Correct.
inside of another box.
Correct.
And you photographed those?
I did.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, if I'm in mistakes. 2, 3, 4.
I think we're over there.
We do not have to mark.
I apologize. The court has possession of it.
I'm showing you what's already been admitted as states 2, 3, and 4 were those photographs that you would have taken on March 13th. of the area where the two guns were located?
Yes.
And would that have been prior to you personally looking in the boxes, or post you looking into the boxes?
These would have been prior to me looking in the boxes.
Okay. And then, Your Honor, if I could have States 5 also. Oh, I'm sorry, it's defense 1.
That I believe is with.
Oh, here it is.
We don't have the.
Your Honor, I promise, I am not going to hold on to anything.
States Exhibit 1, would you have taken that picture with the guns out of the box then?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
Get into the court reporter so I don't lose them.
You collected those items, First Sergeant?
I did.
Are they taken to the Indiana State Police Post and can be kept in possession of the state police since that time?
Yes, sir.
Did you bring them with you?
I did.
If you could please get them out of their boxes, please. I'm going to put a sticker on it marked States Exhibit 5 for the first one, the one on top, and States Exhibit 6 on the bottom one. Have those been in continuous custody of the state police, you said, since March 13th?
Yes, sir.
Had they been altered or in any way, shape, or form?
I just sealed the box.
Okay, would you seal the box
Boxes.
on that day or another day?
These would have been taken to the post on the day that we collected them, put into secure storage, and then we would have packaged everything up another day.
Are they sealed currently?
Yes, they are.
Is that with an evidence tape or seal that the state police uses regularly?
Yes.
Is it a lot of trouble for you to unseal them?
You say to open it, and I
Open,
will.
please. Let's start with States Exhibit 5.
Look at the big knife he has. Would that have a red crime scene tape on it like you see in the CSIs?
And I note that it's in some sort of blue plastic. Is that something you would have done, or is that how you found that?
No, this is the way they come from the factory.
Okay. Could you take States Exhibit 5 out of the plastic?
I'm going to put it in a safe mode here.
Okay.
Okay. Gun is empty, so.
Does that
it
gun
is
appear to
secure.
be in basically the same condition as when you found it on March 13th?
Yes.
If you could please put it back in the box, and just for the record, if you could do the same thing to States Exhibit 6, First Sergeant.
Actually, don't put it back in yet. I want to look at it before you put it back in.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Boyle may want to.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I'll let Mr. First Sergeant Toomey open that box while I show the County Council States Exhibit 5.
It looked like Jamey Noel's worried about it. I think he knows he's going to jail. Maybe 180 days.
And the States Exhibit 6 appear to be in the same condition as when you collected on March 13th.
Yes.
If you could then please replace that back into the plastic container, and I will allow the defense counsel to review that as well.
Officer Freeman. Was this fingerprinted, or did you intend to have it fingerprinted or
No, sir.
anything? So it's acceptable to touch?
Yes.
Without contaminating it?
Correct.
If you could put it in the box for a second.
It seems the judge knows his weapons. Look at Jamey Noel's face. He's worried. That's a $2,000 suit, people, that he stole from the Utica Fire Department's credit card from your taxpayers.
So states exhibit 5 and 6 admitted without objection. Thank you.
Your Honor, I have no other questions for Sergeant Jamey.
Mr. Boyle?
Please, the court, Your Honor. Thank you. First Sergeant, I don't know, do your
We're
records
46
show
minutes
serial
into the
numbers?
2-hour segment.
Do you have that?
Yes.
Let's look at the first exhibit that you have there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Indiana State Police property record and receipt form?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you the one that fills it out, or does that then filled out by Lieutenant Harris?
No, I took them into evidence, so I would have filled it out.
Okay, perfect. I'm looking at item number 2055.
Yes, sir.
It said that's a sealed cardboard box containing a Smith & Wesson MP Shield semi-automatic handgun. Does it have a serial number?
It does.
And what is that, sir?
H as in Henry, N as in Nora, H as in Henry, 8324.
Okay. And there's another item on there, a 2056.
Yes, sir.
Does that would be an indication of another weapon that was found?
Yes.
And that would also be listed as a Smith & Wesson MP Shield semi-automatic handgun?
Correct.
Did that have a serial number?
It does.
And what is that, sir?
H. Henry and Nora, J. John, 5682.
Now, when you fill out these property record and receipt forms, do you ever indicate on there where the item was found?
When necessary, yes.
Okay, can you tell me from that form, to refresh your recollection, does that show where those items were found?
On there, I just have from the basement, from the Noel basement.
Okay, no specific indication that was on the table, in a box, none of that, correct?
Well, we use complementary things. The photographs work in tandem with the description of
Okay,
things.
but if you just had this, you wouldn't have any idea where it was found, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let me ask you this, were you present on the August search?
The August search, the first? No, sir.
You were not there, okay. I'm going to hand you what's been marked for purpose of identification is Defendant's Exhibit 2. I think Mr. Hurdle has no objection, and ask you to take a look at this, would you, please? Tell us what that is, if you could discern it from the exhibit.
It's a receipt from Midwest Gun Exchange Incorporated from Mishawaka, Indiana.
What's it dated?
The date is 10/28/2017.
Okay. Does it have a list of serial numbers of weapons purchased?
Yes.
And would those two serial numbers that were purchased from the Mishawaka gun store in 2017 be the same as the two weapons that you previously identified in the state's direct examination?
I don't have them memorized. I'd have to look at them
You
again.
certainly can. You've got the weapons and you've got the receipt, so go right ahead.
HNJ 5682 matches this one.
Okay.
HNH 8324 matches the other one.
Okay, so the receipt showing the guns were purchased in Mishawaka in 2017 is supported by the identification both on the receipt and on the weapons with the serial numbers. Is that right?
Correct.
Let me ask you, you testified on direct examination, something that you noticed was the fact that it was in a manufacturer's packaging. What does that mean?
This box, this is what it came in.
Okay, and what about the blue kind of cellophane item that you had the weapon stuck in inside the box? What does that tell you?
That's the way I found it inside of the box.
So it would appear that that weapon had not been used and never out of the box since it was manufactured, or at least was purchased?
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
Okay.
It looks to be in good shape, but
Okay. Do you have the receipt? Or did you put it in the box here? There you go. No problem. I've got to give this to the court or I'll get spanked.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, Your Honor.
do you need these anymore?
No, sir. You can put them back. All right. And how many people were doing that search, do you remember, at the house that day? We're going through the house.
There was multiple people there. I couldn't tell you an exact number.
You went to the room where the guns were found, is that correct?
I went through the whole house, so I was in each of the rooms.
I want to ask you a question about the particular room where the guns were found in a second, as soon as we get it up on the screen. Taking a look, First Sergeant, at State's Exhibit number 3, did that appear to be the way the room looked when you were there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And where did you believe the guns were found? Can you show us, like, from your observation here?
You can see the side of the white cardboard box.
This what?
Yes.
22? Okay. And was the table in this array as you saw it that day? All kinds of other items on that?
Yes, sir.
Did it appear that that's been there for a while? That all those items?
It looked like Jamey Noel was
there?
a hoarder.
That's a possibility.
Well, it could look like somebody was not using that room a great deal, correct? Because they've got a lot of stuff on the table. It's not like it's being used every day.
I've been in a lot of different houses in a lot of different states, sir.
Well, they all don't look alike, do they?
Correct.
This looks crowded, correct?
Correct.
All right. I don't believe I have anything further. Thank you very much.
Redirect?
No other questions of this witness, Your Honor?
And I'll show defendant's exhibit number 2, and then
No objection to the receipt that was provided by the defense, Your Honor.
Correct.
Is this staying with the court or going back with me?
Statement admitted.
Officer Toomey, did you examine the shotgun?
Examine it?
Yes.
We just took a cursory look at it because he was allowed to have
I
that.
understand. Was it loaded?
I'm not the one who looked at it.
Do you recall who was?
No, sir.
Do you know what kind it was?
It was a police model, but
Most likely a 12 gauge.
yes, sir.
You keep a shotgun for personal protection in the basement in this crowded area? Feel free to object to anybody. Is that where you'd keep one?
That is not where I would keep it, sir.
Only if you're living in the basement.
There you go.
All right. Court has no further. That prompts questions from either side.
Not on the court's questions, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Officer Toomey, thank you. Is he released from his subpoena?
Yes, Your Honor.
You're free to go. I'll remind you, do not discuss your testimony with anybody. Do not allow anybody to discuss their testimony with you until this matter is completed.
First Sergeant, I believe the guns need to stay.
Yes. Who do I give them to?
Miss Lori.
Generally.
Hi, Miss Collada. Do we need to take a break? A break, 3 o'clock. We'll be off record.
Okay, people, I got a question.
Attention, all drivers out there. I'm about to show you a simple rule that drivers
So-
are using to get auto insurance policies as low as $16 per week.
I got a question. Why would they keep it there in court? It's Clark County. Is there a possibility those weapons could come up missing by keeping it there at Clark County Courthouse? You know, where ex-sheriff Jamey Noel works and where Scotty Maple is the sheriff? Isn't that kind of funny, people? That's only my opinion, but what do you think about it? Let's get back to the video.
634. Oh, there you go. Ms. Clark, for the record, it's my understanding that your motion to quash is now limited based upon some agreements between the parties.
Yes, Your Honor.
Very good. And I guess you'll wait till your client's call.
I will send them down.
Call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. State's call is Jeff Aaron.
Officer Harris, you were sworn earlier, correct? Yes, sir.
Sir, would you state your full name for the record?
Jeffrey C. Herron,
And your spell your last name for the record?
H-A-R-A,
Mr. Aaron, where are you employed?
Indiana State Police.
What is your current rank or title with the state police?
I'm a lieutenant in charge of investigation for what we call Area 5, which is 3 different districts in the central part of the state.
And you turn the audio up.
Charge of, investigations.
I am in charge of investigations. I supervise work for the detectives and tree surveyors.
Who is the lead investigator in the Jamey Noel investigation?
I am.
And when did you become involved in the Jamey Noel investigation?
June 13th, 2023, and I started the investigation in July 13th, 2023.
And since July of 2023, have you been the affiant on all search warrants?
I have.
How many are we up to now?
51.
Have you been a part of every interview of every witness thus far?
I have been, yes.
And have you been a part of the arrest of all three individuals in Jamey Noel, Casey Noel, and Disney Noel?
Yes, sir, I have.
I want to have a brief discussion. The August search warrant of Tay Bridge, were you a part of that?
I was the author of that search warrant, and I directed that, but I never actually went to the Tay Bridge location on August 16th.
Who is the owner and occupant of the Tay Bridge home back in August of 2023?
Jamey Noel.
And was that verified at the time you did the warrant?
It was, yes.
At some point in time, was there an arrest warrant for the defendant, Jamey Noel?
Yes, there was.
And was he ultimately arrested and had an initial hearing here in this courtroom?
He was, yes.
Do you remember when the initial hearing was?
November 9th, 2023.
And at the time of the initial hearing, what was the defendant's place of residence at that time?
3001 Old Tay Bridge, Jeffersonville, Indiana.
The same time, or the same place that it was in August of 2023?
That's correct.
Is that the address that he provided to the court at his initial hearing pursuant to the IRAS Indiana risk assessment?
Yes, it is.
Were you present for that initial hearing?
I was, yes, sir.
Were you present when the judge gave Mr. Noel his conditions with respect to firearms?
I was, yes, sir.
Okay, were you in the courtroom specifically then?
I was, yes.
Were you a part of the collection of any firearms?
I was on the receiving end of those firearms at the post after they were collected.
Okay, let's back up just 1 second. The day of the initial hearing, November of 2023, were you asked either by the court or the parties on that day approximately how many guns there were?
I was, yes, by the judge.
How many were there?
There ended up being, I believe, 82, approximately.
And what was your understanding of the court's order at that initial hearing?
That Mr. Noel surrendered all firearms except for one shotgun for home defense.
And you state that some of those weapons were brought to the Indiana State Police Post. What district?
District 45, the Sellersburg Post.
Is that something you logged or inventoried personally?
No, I was there when they were delivered, but I did not log or inventory them.
When you were present, who delivered their guns?
So Charlie Moon, Bradley Kramer, and also present to observe was a Matt Owens for a period of time.
Was Jamey Noel, the defendant, present at that time?
He was not.
Do you know where he was at that time?
I believe he was still incarcerated or in the process of being released.
So the turning over the weapons was something prior to him being released?
That was my understanding at the time. Since my discussions with Bradley Kramer, I understand maybe he was released slightly early when that was still in the process of going on.
And you were there basically as an observer with respect to those guns?
Correct.
Did somebody from the Indiana State Police log and inventory those?
Yes.
Do you know who that was, or do you recall?
So it was Sergeant Andy Taylor, Sergeant Merritt Toomey, and Sergeant Phil D'Angelo with the Indiana State Police. They were the ones that logged those and provided and filled out the property record receipts.
And you said that was November 9th, 2023?
Yes, sir.
Do you know where the defendant moved back to when he was released from incarceration?
It's my understanding it was 3001 Old Tay Bridge.
Now, I want to direct your attention to the Tom James search warrant, for lack of a better term. Are you familiar with that search warrant?
I am, yes, sir.
Who wrote that search warrant?
I did.
What number search warrant was that?
45.
And just briefly for the court, Tom James is what?
It's a high-end clother, tailored custom outfits, clothing for men and women.
And the search warrant itself was to collect what?
So it was to collect the items that were purchased, the men's suits, the belts, the shoes. I had attached to the search warrant an exhibit, which was multiple pages of a history of purchases from Jamey Noel that I had provided the court. It was to receive those. He had ultimately purchased, I believe, total $183,000 using the Utica Fire Department money to purchase clothes from Tom James. And then I took the last 5 years for the statute of limitations and used those records in order to seize those items because they were purchased with ultimately with Utica money, Utica Volunteer Firefighters Association money, and I was seizing those because they were part of the case.
Were you looking for any sort of paperwork, receipts, etc., anything else for any of those that items or apparel?
Right, the documents and the receipts that went along with those items.
What day did you serve that search warrant?
March 13th, 2024.
Who was the officer in charge at that scene?
I was.
Who was all present? Roughly how many officers were present on March 13th?
I believe we had 7 plus the State Board of Accounts. We had 2 uniformed troopers, 4 detectives, and then a CSI, and then a State Board of Accounts.
Is this something you coordinated with somebody else?
I coordinated all of that.
Once you received the warrant, did you immediately go to the house, explain how the March 13th kind of went?
So I had as I was looking through the different American Express purchases, I saw the $183,000, and so I had contacted Tom James, and I ended up speaking to an attorney for that business, and then he provided those documents to me. And then during that conversation, he said that Mr. Noel had purchased a suit of clothing, various clothing, on, I believe it was December 22nd, 23, and that those items had not been delivered yet. And then he told me later that those items would be delivered on March 13th, 2024. In the morning, he told me roughly between 9 and 9:30.
Let me back up 1 second. He was arrested on November 9th.
Correct.
You provided information from Tom James that he used the Utica credit card on December 22nd.
Yes.
And the suit was going to be delivered on March 13th.
Correct.
Okay. So, on March 13th, you're at the home or you're waiting for the defendant to be there?
So we were told, so I'd written the search warrant the night before, with the exception of the facts that were going to unfold that morning, so I didn't have to write the entire search warrant that morning. We were told that the suit was going to be delivered roughly 9:30 in the morning, and I knew who the salesman was, and that was Jordan Yoakum. And Mr. Yoakum, I had been in contact with him, and over the phone, and he'd indicated about 8:50 that morning that he would be there in about 10 minutes, about 9 o'clock. He described the vehicle he was driving, which was a white Lincoln Aviator. And so we had sat, myself and Detective Hansen had sat in our car down the street, and we watched for the white Lincoln Aviator. And as it had pulled up, then once it had left, I confirmed that the suit was delivered, and then I finished the authoring of that next paragraph of my search warrant, and I sent it to the judge. While that was going on, I'd also called Dave Mitchell that morning and Merritt Toomey and asked for detectives and uniform officers to stage a couple of miles away so they wouldn't be seen, in order to, when I executed the search warrants, they would meet me there at the scene once we decided to execute that, and the judge had signed the search warrant.
How long did you wait then before you went to the Takeridge home?
So our initial plan was to wait, obviously, until the search warrant got issued. So once it got signed, we moved a little closer so we could see the front of the house to make sure Jamey Noel didn't leave with that particular suit in question. And so once we got a little closer, we saw him come out and open the door of a silver Mercedes-Benz, and when he did, we thought he was possibly getting ready to leave. It looked like he was getting into the car, and so I went ahead and pushed it up. My original thought was I was going to allow for a little bit of time to go by to not burn or to not put Mr. Yoakum in front of everybody, having said that he cooperated with state police because he was concerned about that.
Too late now.
Once you got to the home, was there anyone outside then?
So once we pulled up a little farther away at the intersection there to where we could actually see the house, we saw Mr. Noel come out. When he did, he got in the car. At that point, I called Detective Mitchell and Sergeant Toomey and said, come on, bring everybody down. We're going to go ahead and execute the search warrant. And so me and Detective Hansen pulled in to the driveway there. At that point, Mr. Noel was still out by the silver Mercedes-Benz, and we confronted him. I explained to him that I had a warrant that I wanted to read to him, and then I got relatively close to him, and then I read him the warrant verbatim. So he understood what we were searching for, and then I provided him a copy of the list of the items we were searching for.
Was there anyone else outside the home or from the house?
Not from the house, no.
And did you, once you read him the warrant, provided him a copy of the warrant, did you go in?
We waited. He said, I asked him if anybody else were in the house. He said that both of his daughters, Casey and Gracie, were inside of the residence. I said, would you please call them? He called them on the phone with me being present there. He asked them to get their belongings together and come on out. After about 8 to 10 minutes, they still hadn't emerged from the house. I said, I think it's best that we go in. And so Mr. Noel said, hey, I will show you where these items of clothing are, where I keep them. And so he actually led the way, and we went into the house. We entered into the kitchen. As we entered into the kitchen, he walked over to the basement door. He opens the basement door. He yelled for Casey to come out. I apparently didn't know where she was at. And then Casey and Gracie came down the stairs from upstairs. And then at that point, we asked them to get their belongings and leave, and they did. And then after they left, he walked us down and showed us the suit that he just received, which was now on the couch in the living room. And then he walked us into the master bedroom and walked us around there and showed us where his different closets were. And then he turned and walked out, and then we walked down into the basement, and he showed us where other items were in the basement, which was over by that table that we've been talking to this afternoon.
Did you detain the defendant there at the time then or not?
I told him he was free to go.
Did he leave?
He eventually left. He left at, we served the warrant at about 10:35 in the morning, and he left at about 10:50. So he stuck around about 15 to 16 minutes.
Were Casey or Gracie detained at all?
They were not. They were told they were free to leave. They actually went outside for a minute, and then they asked, Detective Hansen went out, and Casey asked if she could get additional items of clothing, and he escorted her back in, and then she went back out and stayed until, I believe, Mr. Noel came out and got into his Mercedes-Benz.
Once you started the search, had they already left?
He actually got into a BMW. Once we started the search, yes. Well, Merritt Toomey, I had directed him to take photographs all around the house, which is standard procedure, and then once we got into the house, once it was secure and we figured there was nobody else in there, then he had started his photography throughout the house.
Who determined who was going to search in which room of the home?
We were all standing in the kitchen. We said, that was the uniform detectives, or uniform officers and the detectives, and I broke them up into teams. I sent Detective Mitchell and or First Sergeant Mitchell and James Donahoe and Chris Hansen down initially with him into the basement, and then the other detective, whose name escapes me, and then one of the uniformed troopers into Mr. Noel's bedroom to start doing a search. I provided both of them with copies of the list of the different items we were looking for and explained to them on those particular items. If I'd been having gone actually to met me with the attorney, he had showed me that on the inside pocket, each one of these particular suits were monogrammed. It had Jamey Noel's name on it. It had a lot number and a series of other numbers, and a lot of those numbers correlated with those documents that we had. So we were able to seize what we believed to be those exact items on that list.
And you provided that list?
I provided both of them lists, both teams' list.
Did you designate yourself to a particular area, or were you kind of monitoring what was happening?
Because I was a supervisor, it was my crime scene or my case, I moved around throughout the day.
Roughly how long after the search started did Detective Mitchell contact you about the basement?
Probably 20 minutes or so. He contacted me and said, hey, I found a couple of firearms down here. Would you come down here and take a look?
And did you go to the basement?
I did.
Detective, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes. States Exhibit 7.
Okay.
Do you recognize that diagram?
This is a diagram I asked Detective Hansen to make of the basement of the 3001 Old Tape Bridge, Jamey Noel's residence.
And does it give a obviously not to scale, but does it give an accurate depiction of the layout of the basement?
It does. It's not to scale, but it does, to me, that having been through that basement, it does lay out it is an accurate description of the basement.
Your Honor,
objection, Your Honor.
Statement, it states Exhibit 7.
I think I heard Mr. Boyle say no objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
States Exhibit 7 admitted for monitoring purposes.
Now, if you could, without the aid of States Exhibit 7, walk the judge to the location of the firearms that Detective Mitchell pointed out to you.
As you walk down the stairs to the basement, the first room you enter will be a finished open room. There's a bar off to one side, and there's a living room with furniture and everything, and then there's ultimately an exit door and a patio out to go ultimately to the pool of the residence. And then if you continue to walk straight, and that's what I did, knowing I'd been down there just a moment before with Mr. Noel, if you walk straight, you go into your right is a movie room, and off to your left, there's like a little sitting area table with a lot of items on top of the table off to your left-hand side. And then there's like a curtain where there's some HVAC system, and I believe a sump pump and things like that. There's one of those blinds set up there.
Were there any bedrooms located in the basement?
There was, but before, when you enter that main living room, as soon as you go down the stairs off to the left, there's a bedroom, and I believe that was Casey's bedroom, is where that was. It's off to the left.
And from the base of the steps in the basement, approximately how far was the table, chairs, and firearms ultimately located?
So the room is probably 15 foot wide, maybe a little bit wider, so 15 feet from the base of the stairs, then into that room where the table is, and so then another 5 or 6 feet. And once you enter into that room, off to the left is the table.
Once Detective Mitchell got in there, did you observe the firearms in the boxes they were contained in? I believe States Exhibits 5 and 6.
This is part one of
I
the
did. He
two-part
showed me and said, "Hey, look, I
category.
pulled this out," meaning the chair out. I saw this white box, and on the top of that box, you could clearly see a Smith & Wesson box, which I recognized as being a firearm box.
I'm showing you 4 pages titled States Exhibits 8 and 9. You stated that you were present for the initial hearing of the defendant on November 9th.
Yes.
And the States Exhibits 8 and 9, what are they?
So States Exhibit 8 is an order directing the transport and retention of certain firearms of the defendant. States Exhibit 9 is order on initial hearing. And that's it.
The firearms that were collected on March 13th, roughly a month ago, were those shotguns?
No, we collected 2 pistols, 2 semi-automatic 9mm Smith & Wesson pistols.
Did you collect those based on these orders and the verbal order from the judge on November 9th, 2023?
Yes. So I was present in the court when that order was issued by the judge. As during the search for our items of clothing receipts, we found those 2 firearms. I immediately thought that would be contraband, so I asked for further instructions from you. But it was all my intentions, because of hearing the judge's order, I was going to seize those items, and I did ultimately direct that those be seized.
No objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I believe probably the court could probably take judicial notice, but the state would move to admit States Exhibits 8 and 9, the court's orders and the felony cause.
States Exhibits 8 and 9 admitted.
Did you also note a shotgun located in the basement?
I did.
Is that something that you collected?
I did not collect. I did not have it ordered be collected. I was present for the judge's order that Mr. Noel retained 1 shotgun. Before we left, I made sure we did not find any other firearms and therefore that was the shotgun that I believed he was legally entitled to own or by the court, so I left that.
Can you describe the shotgun to the court?
I believe it was a pump shotgun, still had a tag on it, it was not loaded, and it was sitting, it was in a box, and you could see the barrel sticking out, and I believe you had a picture of it earlier.
So the exhibit that was admitted through Detective Mitchell, you would agree that that appears to be true and accurate and how you saw it that day also?
Yes.
The two Smith & Wesson in the boxes, do you know if they were loaded at the time?
They were not loaded.
Did you physically take them out of the boxes, examine them at all, and look at them?
So Sergeant Toomey initially took them out. I did pick them up while he had them out after he was done taking photographs, and I got the serial numbers off them, and then ultimately called who I believe to be the seller of that firearm in order to verify that those were owned by Mr. Noel.
The defendant admitted an exhibit, a receipt for those two weapons, and you were in the courtroom here just a little while ago when that happened.
Yes.
Was that your findings as well, that they were purchased from, I believe, Midwest Guns?
Midwest Exchange, yes, and I got all the paperwork associated with that, including the 4473s, which is the federal document which the purchaser has to fill out, including their name and a list of questionnaires, and it included the serial numbers that were mentioned today. It included those two firearms.
Was there any ammunition found at the home?
There was.
Was that ammunition seized as well?
It was not seized. To my knowledge, the judge didn't say anything about not having possession of ammunition, so I did not seize that. It was 9mm ammunition. It's still in the box.
How long have you been with the state police?
35 years.
And can you just tell us the different roles you had with the state police or ranks?
So I started out in November of 1988. Goodness. Sorry. I started out in November 1988. I was a road trooper until out of the Indianapolis Post, then ultimately out of the Putnamville Post until October of 95. Then I became a detective, a district detective, worked Putnamville District, 3 counties. And then from there, 2000, I got promoted to investigative squad sergeant in the Indianapolis Post until 2005. Then I got promoted to district investigative commander of the Putnamville Post until 2016. And then I've held the current position, which is area investigative commander, from 2016 until now. And so 29 years of being a detective, and then 7 years as being a road trooper.
How many people did you say report to you?
I believe it's 25. I think I'd have to add 25 plus 3 civilians.
As a supervisor and 30 plus years on the state police, have you ever been asked to enforce court orders?
Yes.
You ever disregard court orders?
Not intentionally, no.
What if your employees disregard court orders?
They are instructed that's part of their duties, and if we, depending on the situation, they ultimately would get written up, and then we possibly look into the situation, and they could face disciplinary action depending on the degree of what they did or didn't do.
Is a subpoena to come to court a court order?
Yes.
If somebody would disregard a subpoena, would that be important?
Yes. They can get in trouble.
Disciplinary possibility?
Possibly.
You worked the road for a period of time.
I did. Occasionally still put on the uniform.
Ever stop anybody for a traffic violation?
Hundreds, if not thousands.
Judge, I'm going to object to relevancy now. That doesn't do much to do with the march.
Mr. Irwin?
Your Honor, the relevancy is the issue of the defendant being a law enforcement officer for nearly 30 years.
President Trump and Mike Braun had America on a roll. Economy, securing the border, and respect for law enforcement.
So, I'm going to end this, that way you can watch the rest of it in part 2. And if you all go to Scott County, Indiana Sheriff's Department's website and look at the bookend picture of Jamey Noel, that looked like a suicide outfit. I say they probably got him on suicide watch. That's only my opinion. So I want to thank you all. Subscribe to my channel. You viewers, subscribe. And I will subscribe to your all's channel. I threw a couple of commercials in there, which I don't get paid. So I want to thank you all. Go to part 2. And I don't know what happened to part 1, but here we go. So goodbye. Hit the subscribe bell. Hit the thumbs up. I want to thank you all. God bless you all.